Okay, so we are doing this on Zoom. Originally, we are going to do this on StreamYard, but having technical issues over there with StreamYard as always.
Oh,
And we have got
tell
a
me about it.
great guest joining us today. And I'll tell you some big news for the heavy metal music community. Radio promotion powerhouse Skateboard Marketing is celebrating 35 years of keeping metal on the dial, and they're making a milestone with a private red carpet anniversary event. Uh, Munsey Ricci joins us today. How are you, sir?
What's going on, man?
Now, you have been the skateboard marketing, bigwig. You've been behind the scenes. You've been getting hard rock and heavy metal on commercial, satellite, and syndicated and college radio for 3.5 decades, which is absolutely amazing. Uh,
Actually, it's 4 decades because
wow.
you have to include the 3 years I was at Polygram Records in New York doing radio promo. All right, and then my time as a writer, which I was more a journalist in college radio and worked for Combat Records prior to that when I was in college. See, I was one of the fortunate ones coming up, dude. I I mean, I delivered auto parts and worked in a deli like everyone else when we were 17, 18 years old. And I worked at a gas station, my uncle's gas station as a mechanic when I was like 16, but once I was about 20, 21, I was in a band and worked in a recording studio. And I was fortunate enough to always find an industry gig. Now, the money wasn't great, but between doing 3 or 4 different things and having no time to sleep, and then time to go to shows and play shows, I was able to make enough money to pay my bills. So it was kind of cool.
Just absolutely amazing. You
Yeah,
have
go figure.
you have worked with Motörhead, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Dio, Testament, Iron Maiden, all the different new wave artists. Just amazing stuff. You have really helped keep legends loud, my friend.
Dude, I gotta tell you, it's not easy, but it's not rocket science either. A lot of dudes are like, "Oh, I can do that." I'm like, "Yeah, well, that's great. Here's a telephone. Get your call sheet together, build your relationships, and do it." And most people can't. You have to remember it's this very relationship driven, and anybody who works in radio promotion or publicity or artist development or A&R is going to tell you it's you have to be a people person, and it's relationship driven. And if you don't have that, you'll never succeed. You won't go anywhere.
It's just absolutely amazing what you've been able to do. 35 years is a hell of a long time in the industry.
Yeah, dude,
Uh,
I'm kind of wondering where 35 years went. I'm like, it cannot be that long, but apparently it is. So,
so,
that's why we're having a big ass party, and we're gonna throw a nice bash because, dude, the last time we had it, every year we did an anniversary party during the CMJ convention in New York.
yeah.
And like anybody that's been to them knows that, they're private, invite only for industry and my friends. So, we did them at Webster Hall. Did them at Don Hills. We also had the Bowery Poetry Club. Those were like three of the main venues, and we split a couple of showcases with Victory Records as well back in the day.
Yeah.
And we've had everybody from Fear Factory, Warrior Soul, Blind Guardian, Gravedigger, OTEP. Let's see, who else did we have? I think it was our 12th or 13th anniversary. We had Black Crown Initiate and Achelia. So we've had like some big names on the metal side come in and play our showcases. And dude, like once the headliners get ready to go on, we open doors for fans and ticket holders, and we pack out the room, and everybody's good and sauced by them because after a 3-hour open bar, what's better?
That is amazing. That is just.
Dude, open bars rule. You want, like, listen, that's how we did it back in the day. You want to put bodies in the room, have an open bar, and everybody's coming. That's what you do. You
That
have
is
an open
amazing.
bar, dude. And it's like people, oh, dude, they got an open bar. I'm going to go there first and hang out and drink for free before I have to pay $15 a beer.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff you've done. Looking back to the first day in '91 in August, did you ever imagine that skateboard marketing would still be going strong and still matter this much in 2026?
No and yes.
Okay.
All right. Yes, because I figured I'm relentless and I don't stop and I don't let up. So I knew I was going to be somewhere. But no, because I didn't know what the current climate was going to be 35 years ago. Nobody could predict that. I mean, you could predict like a couple of years in the future or maybe 5 years in the future, but predicting 35 years, like technology changes so much and you have like new people coming in and it's like a new aspect and like a new mentality. So I knew I was going to be here, but I just didn't know where. And I just said, well, I'm doing all right. Why move? Why change? Let's just stay right here. And I set up shop at home. I had my staff come to the house and we worked from home. And I saved myself a boatload of money in overhead. And at that point, things just kept going. And when like the roller coaster went down, well, I'm working from home. I didn't have to pay out money. I stayed home. When the roller coaster went up, well, I went out and I was out, So, I mean, it's the same scenario with every business. It's a roller coaster. It's up and down.
It's absolutely amazing what you've been able to do. Now, you've worked everything from Motörhead, Judas Priest, Signs of the
Yeah.
Swarm. So, how has this job of getting metal on radio changed from the early 90s to today?
Well, remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, if you recall, when we launched a record, we would manufacture like 1,000 to 1,500 CD pros. And
Yep.
we would blanket the whole country. A metal band, like at Polygram, we had Onslaught, Yngwie Malmsteen, Mortal Sin, Tony McAlpine, Vinnie Moore, Kiss, The Scorpions, Def Leppard. Who else did we have? Company of Wolves, LA Guns. And like, honestly, my first gold plaque in the industry was Cocked and Loaded from LA Guns. That was the first gold plaque that I ever was awarded. And the crazy thing about it is I was able to sign off on it myself, which I thought was kind of cool. Now, back then, what you serviced like 1,000 to 1,500 CD pros, and then you hired everybody under the sun, and everybody went after a record, and then you had the chart. You had your alternative charts, you had your metal charts, you had your rock charts, and we worked something until we got traction. Then we got the band on the road. We got them a big tour. And from there, it was just, building the artist and artist development. Today, it's very, very different because, I mean, if you stop and you look at my expense account budget back in the day, my expense account budget was more than my paycheck. Now, I was 24 years old making 34.5 a year. And my expense account was like 50, 75 grand. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of money, but the good thing was is if we spent money, we wound up getting ads at radio and we sold records out of it. Because if we got the ad, hypothetically, let's say at WDHA in New Jersey, or, we got MMR in Philly or XTV Tampa, we'd stop and look at SoundScan on a 5-day roll and we'd sell like 3,000 records, which was beautiful. So it was worth flying into the market, going to the show, taking the station out to dinner, and then having drinks. And then we get the ad and everything was great. Today, it's very different. Your working budgets are very small. And a lot of labels are working on smaller skeleton crews. So we wind up wearing 2 or 3 different hats. Now, in that sense, instead of servicing physical product, we service stations digitally. And, I love digital. I think it's brilliant because I can upload it to iPool, stations log into their account and they download the audio, put it right into system automation, and we're good to go. I don't have to have an intern stuff an envelope, pay for postage, go to the post office, then wait a week for it to get there. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
So, that's one of the aspects that's like I think is even better. But you also have to stop and look at, you know, the state of the artists too, because the bands are very different too. Yeah, we still have our legacy bands, Judas Priest and Sabbath and Tony Iommi, and all the legacy bands out of there are still going to be legacy bands because their fan base is massive. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Well, let's stop and look at the new developing bands that just blew up, like Lorna Shore. Okay, small little deathcore band from New Jersey, and all of a sudden, like 3, 4 years later, they sold out the theater at Madison Square Garden. Okay, yeah, and I mean, I'm going to stop and look at that and say, now that's a beautiful thing. Now you have like other bands. You have like Signs of the Swarm, the Zenith Passage, and Distant, and a lot of other deathcore bands. They're coming along, and that's deathcore has been pretty predominant. And yeah, thrash is still big, and metalcore is still big. I mean, dude, give me Kill Switch or Machine Head any day. I'm all about it. I love to get a little Rob Flynn going on. In the office when you're at work, it's like it gets your blood going. But dude, deathcore has gotten super big.
That is amazing. We have got a great guest with us today. He joins us live here in our broadcast. And I'll tell you, you've worked with some incredible, incredible folks. How has, we were talking a little bit about how it has changed, but how has it remained the same?
The fan base is still pretty much, it's not the same, but it's the same. The fan base's musical taste has changed. The way fans ingest music is different. Like, I mean, when me and you were coming up and we were 15 years old, what did we do on Tuesday after school? We went to the record store, and for me, it was Slip Disc Records in the neighborhood, and we'd buy all the new stuff that was getting released that day. Now it's predominantly streaming numbers, and most physical sales are venue sales. When the band's out on the road, they'll get a few boxes of CDs or a case of discs, and they'll sell them while they're on the road, which is beautiful. But, I mean, when you stop and look at SoundScan, I mean, back in the day, if we did 100,000, the band flopped. Let's get them off the label. Now a band does 100,000. They're like, oh, let's sign them to a 3-year deal and give them a big advance, because you're dealing with, it's a very different climate. And streaming is like the forerunner on it, so obviously Apple Music and Spotify and Yahoo Music and, the other streaming platforms and other DSPs, that's where most fans are getting it. Now, the downside of that is that you don't have a tangible disc or vinyl in your hands where you could see liner notes, you can look at artwork, you can look at some cool stuff. Now you're like looking at something and you're looking at your phone screen and you have to spend a half hour on your phone reading through liner notes. And that's if you buy the disc on, you bought the disc, then you get the full booklet.
Yep.
So that's where that has changed. The mentality is pretty much almost the same. Fans are still the same fans. Their musical tastes are different. And, as we start to get older and the fans are there, they're not getting any younger. It's a new vibe and a new scene. And you just stop and look at the bands that they're listening to. And once you get into a few of the newer bands, then you're going to find a lot more artists that you really dig. So at that point, it's all relevant, so nothing really changes. You're just listening to new bands like a few years later. That's all it is.
Absolutely amazing. We've got a great, great guest with us today. And he is just a legend. Munsey has been around for, since God was a baby doing all this stuff. And so let's talk a little bit about Metal Contraband.
Yep.
stepped into a huge gap when the CMJ disappeared. How important has this platform become for labels, managers, bands trying to track the real metal radio performance?
Well, the commercial radio, we use media base, and that's always been the industry standard. Billboard had BDS, Broadcast Data Systems, which is the same thing.
Yeah.
When R&R magazine folded, Billboard bought Mediabase, and then they dissolved BDS, and now they only have Mediabase. See, the good thing about Mediabase is it's monitored airplay, so it eliminates paper, which is brilliant. But it's a singles-driven format. Okay, so everything on their charts, on any of the charts, whether it's the legacy acts, the active rock chart, the top 40 chart, the classic rock chart, it's all singles. CMJ was an album chart. And if anybody remembers, you had the Hard Report, FMQB, Album Network, Gavin, Foundations Magazine, Rock Pool. There was a lot of trade magazines back in the day. And I think it was Ray Koob at FMQB started the whole spins-based platform back in the early 90s. And he started it with FMQB on an album chart, not a singles chart. And then everybody adapted that as the industry norm. Then, as all the trades were disappearing, there was really there was one trade left, and that was CMJ for metal. And CMJ stopped publishing the beginning of 2017. And everybody kind of saw that they were going to just cease publishing. So I went to Beatrix and Walker and said, hey, dude, let's start Metal Contraband. I'll absorb all the costs. I'll pay for the site. It'll be my baby. I'll file for charter. We'll do it in conjunction with you guys. And both of them went for it. And they said, cool. So we launched in September of 2016, and we had a top 50 spins-based chart. And it's predominantly 60% commercial and 40% college, public, and NPR, but the large stations would stick. If you look at WSOU, obviously they're very predominant and a big player, at least in the metropolitan area here. Those are the stations that we want, because when they get something on, they have a market cue. And then we took it a step further. We put in an industry Q&A section. We put a tour date section. We also put a radio metal editorial section, and we put a photo dialogue section. So now there's a gallery, a photo gallery, and a top 10 most added for the country. And we kind of set the platform as the same as all the other trades were back through the 90s and early 2000s. So most of the the veteran industry promo people that have been around forever look at it and know exactly what it is. So a lot of the new cats coming in, well, there's about a second of a learning curve till they figure out what it is, and then it becomes the industry norm. And, I saw there was going to be a gap, and we couldn't have just one, So, NACC, the North American College Chart, was just getting ready to launch as well. And they launched right after we launched, but they were only doing top 5 ads for loud rock, for metal. So it was the NACC top 5 heavy, most added. So now they have charts for all multiple formats. So now there's 2 of us again, which is good. And what may actually come into play is we could use a third, because it's always nice to have more than 2. 3 or 4 charts is always good to have, and that gives you a really good, strong gauge on where you're at and where a record is. And then on top of that, most experienced promo people are going to say, okay, we have this. All right, let's stop and look at Mediabase and see what we got. Oh, okay, great. We got WJXQ, we got WJJO, we got The Hog, we got KISW Seattle. They're going to see all of that on our tracking report. They're going to see all of that in Metal Contraband, and they're going to see all of that in Mediabase. So everything coincides and kind of works together as one.
That is just amazing.
Yeah, dude. And, dude, 10 years. September, all right, will be 10 years for Metal Contraband. So I'm like, okay, 35 for Skateboard and 10 for Metal Contraband. I'm like, how did that happen? But it did.
How did that happen? I just what you've managed to be able to do is absolutely amazing. It's fantastic. So this party that is going down, Don Jameson is hosting this.
Yes.
You've known him for over 40 years.
Yeah, L'Amour's.
What's it mean to have him involved, and what can people expect from this all-star jam band that you've got coming up?
Dude, I am like honored. I called him and asked him if he could do it, and he said, yeah, I can do it. I said, okay, great. You know, now listen, I could have got like a radio guy to go up and MC or do something, but I wanted to do something different. Now, for the All-Star Jam, which, you know, I already have a handful of like commitments, and I'm still waiting on a few more. But, you know, obviously there's going to be a big announcement for that because there's going to be something special for the All-Star Jam. Okay. And that'll be getting announced probably the middle to the end of September. We'll have the third press release will go out with the announcement. Okay. But we're not going to say what the set list is going to be. Okay. So, I mean, more or less, it's going to be like walking into Hammerjack circa 1989 when Kix is playing. All right. And you have a room filled with people that are drinking heavily, having a good time. Okay. Minus the debauchery from the 80s going on, you know? I mean, I'll try and generate a little bit of that just for shits and giggles. But, you know, you have to have some debauchery.
That is amazing.
Right?
We've got to.
Dude, if there isn't any debauchery, it can't be fun.
Hey, I'll tell you, I've known a lot of people over my time, and debauchery is always a good thing.
Yeah.
So, past parties have featured private performances, Fear Factory, Blind Guardian, OTEP. What is the vibe going to be like at this event, and why is it important to make this a huge deal after a 10-year break?
Well, you know, we started planning our 30th, but COVID kind of got in the way.
Yeah.
Then I stopped and looked at Andrew WK had just announced his tour, and he was playing at the Bowery Ballroom. So I called Napalm Records, and they were cool with us doing the party. We were going to do the party in the basement down there and tag that as our 30th anniversary. But then Andrew wound up canceling his tour. So we never made the announcement. We didn't do it. And then everything was weird for a couple of years. You know, there was still like, oh, we can't do this. Oh, we can't do that. I said, no, if I'm going to do something, it's no holds barred. I'm going to do this, and it's going to be whatever we want to do, and nobody's going to stop us, you know? So I said, let's wait till our 35th. And this time, instead of having like 250 people, I have the whole venue for like 3-4 hours, which is beautiful. So I have not only more people, I have a bigger room. I can invite more people, and we're going to have like some special surprise stuff and some guests going on, which I'm pretty excited about.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You've got some really cool stuff happening here. So for the younger bands and the managers that are paying attention to this today, who might not know history, what's the one piece of advice you'd give about building real radio campaigns in today's landscape?
Well, first and foremost, you need the right songs, okay? Yep. There's a lot of bands out there, they make a record, they don't have songs, you know, and I pass on a few because they just don't have the songs. So for a new band, if you're going to go in the studio, take your time, go in and rehearse, go out and gig a lot, because when you go out and you tour, or even if you just play 3 nights a week live, and then you rehearse 1 night a week, you know, your chops are at their peak. And that's when the band's the tightest, because you're playing the same songs over and over again, okay? Get in the studio and pick your studio and pick the engineer wisely. Okay. Kind of, you have to stop and say, well, if we want somebody good, it's going to cost us money. So you're going to have to, at least everyone's going to have to get a gig. And I mean, I did it when I was in a band. I had a job. We needed to do something for the band. Well, everybody, forked over some cash. That's what you do. And that's just how it is. Once you're there, the next best, smartest thing you could do is save your money and get money in the bank and keep your money in the bank because you're going to need it at some point. You may have an opportunity to go out and tour where it's a buy-on and it's not expensive, and you're going to be playing at 7:40 in the evening in front of like 300 or 400 people instead of going on at 6:55 when doors are at 6 o'clock and there's 30 people in the room. Okay. Yeah. So, you're going to want to look at getting out with a bigger band and trying to sell some merch and cutting your teeth and going through the grind. And then once you're in that position, from there, you have to stay current. And also, social media is really important because, you want to always have a constant flow of content out at social media.
Yeah.
And the one thing you want to look at is streaming numbers. A lot of programmers, they're like, well, I can't touch a record unless it's got at least 50,000 streams on Spotify or Apple Music. Okay. So at that point, you're going to really want to focus on trying to build up streaming numbers and social media hits. Okay. So, my advice to especially the newer bands is that's where you start and save your money because you're definitely going to need that further down the road.
Yeah.
And build your relationships, go to shows, meet people, I get more business done backstage at shows sometimes than I do on the phones. Yeah, it's ridiculous, but I do. I'm like, oh, I got to talk to him. I've been trying to get him on the phone. I got to talk to him, and bam, it gets done. Or somebody comes over to me and they're like, hey, by the way, we just finished up a new record we're announcing in 3 weeks. We got to talk. So a lot of that goes on at shows. So, being visible and being out, especially for a new band, makes all the difference.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
You have put together quite the deal. I know that I've known you for, God, heck of a long time. So you've always been good to me. You've always been good to other folks that I know. Talk to us a little bit about, as the fans change, a company must change with the fan base. You have said that on a few occasions.
Yes.
What is the biggest shift that you are seeing with radio, metal radio, discovery, and how is skateboard and everything that you're doing adapting to it?
All right. I mean, let's start like from the beginning. We had Hawkwind, we had Diamond Head, we had Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Okay. And Black Sabbath, I mean, that's the band that got me into metal. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath was the album. I mean, dude, I was 13 years old and I saw 3 topless chicks looking up with horns on, looking over a guy on a bed that said 666. I'm like, what is this? I got to listen to this immediately.
I've got to listen to this immediately.
I threw it on and heard the opening riff and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And like 2 weeks later, I bought a Gibson SG from my friend's brother for $10, and I started to learn to play guitar because of Tony Iommi. And that's where I started. Now let's stop and look at the fan base from that era. Then along came Anthrax and Metallica, and who else did we have at the time? Nuclear Assault. You had Agnostic Front. A lot of those bands were just like starting out and coming up from like early to mid 80s, when thrash got very predominant, So now let's stop and look at like the old school thrashers like us, I mean, that's where it was then. Then you got in the 90s and it was more, it flipped kind of like alternative metal and crossover. All right. And hardcore and post-core. Okay. Then you got into the 2000s and death metal got really big again. Okay. Now here we are in 2026 and deathcore is like the predominant format along with thrash. And the old legacy acts that have survived 25, 30 years, Anthrax, Machine Head, Killswitch Engage, Obituary, Bolt Thrower. I mean, all those bands are still around and touring. Well, most of them are anyway, and touring and, doing shows. But now we have the new era of bands coming in, and that's where it's at. That's where the scene is right now. So as a viable company and an outlet, you have to change with that. You get those bands and you have to take those bands and do with those bands what you did with bands 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, we had to do with the bands that we did 20 years ago. It's the same concept, building radio airplay, only with a different scene and a different format. That's all. So you have to change with that. And if you can't change with it, well, you're going to be that old guy sitting at the bar on a Wednesday at 1 PM, drinking, spending their Social Security checks. And that's no fun.
That's no fun.
That's no fun.
We have got a great guest with us today. So Munsey, when you look back on your career, and we've talked about all the cool stuff, what is a couple mistakes that you think you've made along the way?
Oh, God. You learn really quick major label politics, okay? Yeah. There's certain do's and don'ts, and there's things that you just don't say. You learn to keep your mouth shut, okay? And one thing I learned that almost got me kicked to the curb is never get involved in artist management and label politics, okay? Me as a representative of the label, working for the label, the band has an issue with management, don't get involved. Let the band work it out with management. They have a problem with their lawyer or somebody else, well, let them work that out amongst themselves. I kind of keep my mouth shut and learn to just say, well, some things, like some places you were never meant to like really step into, and that's one of them, Okay. So I get, I always got, to that point of, okay, we're going to do that. The other thing too is, like the politics sometimes get pretty thick, okay? Especially at major label, So if somebody likes something and you don't like it, well, you can't say you don't like it, it's fine, okay? You get in, you take that record, and you do the best possible job you can do. You find the niche where that record belongs. You find stations that like that band. You get that record played. You work it up the charts. And instead, if you give everything 101%, you give that record 110%, okay? And you try and make that happen. In some cases, some indies will say, well, yeah, it wasn't that great of a record, and this is what we got. That's a do not do. You as an industry professional.
That's a do not do.
That is a do not do. You as a professional have to find a way to make that record happen. And if it takes the extra mile and more effort, well, then that's what you have to do. You go for it. And if you wind up working a week or two out of pocket, well, you did right, and I always try and do right by everybody.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Well, before we let you go, how do people get information on everything you've got planned, coming, all that?
Well, it's all up on our socials. We have an Instagram page. We have a Facebook page. We have an X page. We have a Threads page. I have a Tumblr page. And we have a Pinterest page. Okay. But if you go to skateboardmarketing.com, our homepage, there's links right on top to all our socials. And you can find us on Linktree. And all our company info is there, our email address, our office number, and they can find everything straight from, our homepage. I'm the easiest guy to find. Or you can just Google Skateboard Marketing contact info, and the first link that's going to show up is the contacts page from our website. I got to laugh because some people aren't that swift. They can't figure that out yet.
Well, that too.
Dude, it's funny. I'm like, dude, I'm at a show. They're like, bro, I've been trying to get in touch with you. I didn't have your number. I'm like, did you go to skateboardmarketing.com and click the contact info tab? Because like all my info is right there, including my phone number. So some people ain't so swift. I don't know.
That is amazing. So that's the word, kids, from the people who've been keeping metal on the dial since 1991, which is amazing. Skateboard Marketing's 35th anniversary red carpet party hits the Meadows in Brooklyn on Friday, October 9th. Private invite only, by the way. However, it is hosted by Don Jameson with an all-star jam band ready to raise the roof. And a huge congratulations to Munsey and the entire skateboard crew. And from the early days of Polygram Combat through 3.5 decades of campaigns for both Legends, Next Generation, they have stayed true to the mission. Support the artists, grow the fans, and keep the music loud. And stay tuned to Metal Contraband for more updates. And Munsey, I really appreciate you taking as much time as you did out of your day to chat with us today, brother.
Oh, dude, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, bro.
Because I have known you a long time and have worked with you several years. And I really appreciate it. Thanks for making some time, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, sir.
You got it, brother.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you.